Roland Gray had not set foot beyond his wrought iron gate in almost 4 years. Yet the rhythm of the seaside town of Harrington Bay pulsed through the cracked windows of his Victorian manor all the same. Waves slapped the jetty, gulls screeched across the low clouds, and somewhere in the tangle of narrow streets, another resident met an inexplicable, spectacular end. That was when the rumors began. Each bizarre death seemed to have been written, sometimes word for word, into the unfinished chapters of Roland's latest manuscript. It started with a florist named Lydia Roan, who slipped on a slick marble stairwell, smashed a vase of calla lilies, and bled out before anyone found her. The next morning, the Harrington Bay Gazette ran a front-page piece describing the white petals floating in scarlet water around her body. A week later, Harriet Trombley, Roland's long-suffering editor, discovered the exact sentence, down to its punctuation, in the pages Roland had mailed the evening before Lydia died. Harriet assumed coincidence until it happened again. A fisherman tangled in his own nets, hauled up like a marionette of flesh and hemp, a simile Roland alone could conjure. Detective Sergeant Mara Price did not care for superstition. She believed in motives, means, and the dull perseverance of shoe-leather policing. Yet even she felt unease when her partner, Detective Ethan Clark, strode to her desk with a bundle of photocopied pages. "Fresh from Trombley," he said. "Her author drafted this yesterday. Compare it to today's obit." Mara skimmed both sheets. On one, a character named Jonas collapses at the organ of St. Bridget's Church, crushed beneath a section of fallen pipe. On the other, an almost identical report recounting the real Jonas Harrow, parish caretaker, dead under the very same pipe the dawn after Roland drafted the scene. "Coincidence is getting expensive," Ethan muttered. They drove to Gray House at twilight, the crunch of gravel under the cruiser's wheels masking the hush that normally cloaked the estate. Roland met them at the threshold, silver-haired, eyes shadowed by hollow nights. His fingers bore ink stains no modern keyboard could produce. "Detectives," he rasped, as though conversation were a language he'd nearly forgotten. Inside, Roland's study felt less like a workplace than a mausoleum of unspoken words. Books teetered in uneven towers, drafts scattered like autumn leaves, and in the room's center perched a black Remington Standard typewriter. Its keys gleamed, polished by feverish use. A brass plaque on the carriage read, "Tell me your story, and I will tell you mine." Ethan opened bluntly. "Mr. Gray, we believe details in your fiction correspond to local deaths." Roland's gaze flicked to the Remington, then back. "I write because that is what I was made to do," he said. "I do not orchestrate tragedies." The interview yielded little. Roland surrendered no drafts, citing artistic privacy, yet promised to forward any chapters referencing upcoming calamities, should such premonition occur. As Mara left, she lingered beside the typewriter. Its keys, though still, felt tense, like a sleeping animal whose whiskers twitch at passing footsteps. 2 nights later, Harriet Trombley phoned Mara from a motel outside town. Her voice shook. "He delivered new pages, slid them under my door. Listen." Harriet read, "A baker is found in his shop, throat sealed with confectioner's sugar, lungs crystallized beneath pastel frosting." Harriet wheezed. "Detective, my brother owns the only bakery in Harrington Bay." Mara and Ethan staked out that bakery until dawn. When nothing happened, they relaxed enough to accept coffee from the brother himself, Oliver Trombley, who chuckled at the absurdity of artistic prophecy. They left at first light. At 9 a.m., a passerby saw smoke curling from Oliver's kitchen. Firefighters discovered him slumped near the industrial mixer, airway clogged by a cascade of volatile icing that had burst from a pressurized feeder pipe. The medical examiner described lungs glazed inside a sugary tomb. Public panic ballooned. Newspapers speculated Roland Gray was either a deranged puppet master or a demonically blessed oracle. Yet Roland remained inside his manor, letters unanswered, curtains drawn, Mara returned armed with a warrant. This time she confiscated every loose sheet, searching for mention of anyone still alive. In paragraph after paragraph, fresh characters died in baroque ways, suffocated in a grain silo, drowned inside a flooded elevator, impaled upon a frozen birch branch snapped loose by wind. None of the names were fictional anymore. They matched the Harrington Bay census, a roll call of neighbors awaiting catastrophe. Roland watched her box his pages with the sorrow of a parent parting from a feverish child. "You won't stop it," he whispered. "Not while it's hungry." "It?" Mara asked. His eyes dipped to the Remington. The typewriter was seized as evidence. For chain of custody, Ethan transported it to the precinct's evidence room. He reported the keys vibrating against their case, as though rattled by distant thunder. But no storms rolled through that night. For 3 days, no deaths matched Roland's prose. Mara dared to hope correlation had ended. Then the Gazette printed a story of a schoolteacher beheaded by a snapped clothesline wire during recess. Ethan checked the storage log. At roughly the same time, the evidence clerk found the Remington lying on the floor beside its locked cage, ribbon spooled out like entrails, a single sheet wadded underneath that read, "She never saw the wire sing." "Someone tampered," Mara said. "Or something." Cameras showed no intruder. Roland had been under house arrest with an ankle monitor, yet the prose still materialized and bodies still fell. Ethan, ever pragmatic, proposed that the Remington required creative energy, a psychometric vampire siphoning imagination, manifesting written death into the physical world. "A cursed relic," he said, half jest, half fear. Mara wasn't prepared to adopt the vocabulary of curses, but evidence bent her rational spine until it nearly snapped. They dug into the Remington's provenance. Records traced it to an estate sale in Maine, before that to a curio shop in Salem, and before that to Germany, circa 1912. Every prior owner was either a writer or journalist. Most met violent, bizarre ends mirroring passages they'd typed. Newspapers ran threads of the myth under sensational banners. The blood-inked machine. Death on keys. No one kept it longer than a decade. Roland had acquired it at auction 12 years ago, when his debut novel, The Lantern's Widow, catapulted him to fame. He'd produced nothing substantial since. Mara requested Roland be brought to the station. Behind the two-way glass, he looked frailer, as though the removal of the Remington had snapped some tether to his own vitality. He revealed a secret he had never confessed. "I tried to bargain with it," he told Mara. "At first it gave me brilliance, plots delivered with orchestral clarity, characters breathing on my page. But each day it demanded greater specificity, real names, real places. When I resisted, it threatened to devour my gift entirely. I feared creative oblivion more than moral ruin. That is my sin." "Objects don't threaten, Mr. Gray," Mara said, though her conviction wavered. Roland raised ink-stained hands. "Then explain why I am drying up, why every page I attempt by hand dissolves to dust within hours. My imagination leaks from me into that machine like blood through a leech." Ethan observed through the glass. "He's detoxing," he murmured, "like losing a drug." That night, Mara dreamed of keys clacking without fingers, each strike a hammer against bone. When she awoke, her palms ached as if she'd been typing until dawn. The precinct captain decided the Remington was too volatile to store. An evidence transfer team arranged to ship it to a distant forensics lab. But at midnight, while the building dozed, sprinklers burst above the holding room. Amid the chaos, security caught a glimpse, grainy footage, of the typewriter sliding across wet linoleum unaided, carriage return slapping like a metronome. By morning, a new sheet protruded, soaked yet legible. I go where the story goes. 2 janitors were found in the basement, crushed beneath collapsed shelves described precisely in the fresh text. Enough, Mara thought. If the Remington hungered for narrative, they would starve it. She enlisted Harriet, Ethan, and Roland, paroled under supervision, for a desperate plan. Lure the typewriter to Roland's study, the womb it knew best, then sever its bond by destroying the very energy it craved. We burn every manuscript, every unfinished idea, reduce your fiction to ash, she told Roland. Leave it nothing to feast on. Roland hesitated. That is my life's work. And lives are being lost, Mara said. Choose. On a storm-rattled evening, they returned to Grey House. Mara and Ethan carried boxes of confiscated drafts. The Remington, wrapped in a tarpaulin, thunked against Roland's oak desk. Thunder grumbled. Harriet poured lighter fluid into a metal barrel set in the garden. Pages waited inside like brittle feathers. Roland approached the typewriter, fingertips brushing its space bar. It purred, a vibration that traveled into his bones. It's pleading, he whispered. Letters began to hammer against the ribbon, though no hand moved, spelling, "Don't, I give you worlds." Roland's face crumpled. "Those worlds are cages," Harriet snapped. She struck a match. Before she could drop it, the typewriter erupted. Keys flailed, metal arms whipping the air. Paper gushed from the platen in a scroll of frantic prose. Names, deaths, dates, every possible permutation of suffering. Wind tore through the study, scattering inked prophecies. One sheet slapped against Ethan's cheek. He pried it free and saw his own name, his own end. Bullet burst in right lung. Courtesy unknown. Panic ignited. "Roland!" Mara shouted. "Write an ending! End its story!" "My words are its fuel!" he yelled back. "Then starve it with silence." But the Remington had another tactic. Keys stilled, carriage dinged, and new words appeared one by one, as though typed by a slow, cruel hand. "Let me drink, and the detective lives." Ethan read the line, color draining from his face. "It's bargaining with her now." Mara grabbed Roland's wrists. "Don't listen. Finish this." Roland rested free, spine straightening even as fear gutted him. He rolled a fresh sheet into the platen. The machine clattered in delight. But Roland did not strike a key. Instead, he pressed fingers against letters, pinning them. "No more," he said, "unless you write under my hands." The typewriter trembled. Its keys nudged up and down. But Roland's weight held. "Harriet," he called, eyes never leaving the black metal. "Light it." She dropped the match into the barrel. Flames roared, devouring the stacked drafts. Heat licked the windows. As ash spiraled heavenward, the Remington spasmed. Its ribbon shredded, spools spinning in manic reverse. Screws popped, springs twanged loose. Yet still it typed, imprinting gibberish on the untouched sheet. KJ-93, Jadi, nonsense fighting extinction. Roland winced as though each dislodged screw pierced him. Mara realized the bond ran both ways. "He's its conduit," she said. "Cut him loose." Ethan lunged, but Roland shouted, "Stay back!" With a final surge, he slammed the carriage to the far margin. One last bell ding. The Remington shrieked. A plume of black smoke jetted from its type bars, filling the study with the stink of scorched ink. Metal sagged, half molten. Then, silence. Only rain against cracked panes. Roland collapsed. Mara caught him before his head struck the floor. Harriet dialed emergency services. Smoke curled from the husk on the desk, keys fused in place, plaque too hot to touch. At the hospital, Roland drifted between worlds. He awoke long enough to whisper to Mara, "Did it end?" She nodded. No new deaths. Paper and a mundane headline about budget meetings. She did not add that Ethan still stared at the sheet predicting his shooting, an omen she'd confiscated but could not bring herself to burn. Roland's hands twitched across the bedspread, as if seeking a keyboard that no longer existed. "Empty," he murmured. Tears glazed his eyes. "The stories are gone." "Maybe they'll grow back," Mara said, though she didn't know if imagination regenerated like skin or vanished like breath on cold glass. The charred Remington was locked in a police evidence safe reinforced by concrete and salt circles for whatever comfort superstition might grant. Lab technicians pronounced it inert, an artifact rather than a machine. When they attempted to lift individual keys for cataloging, they found them soldered together by a glaze resembling cooled volcanic rock. 6 weeks later, Harrington Bay regained its small-town serenity. Children returned to playing under St. Bridget's organ pipes, and the bakery reopened under a new owner. Mara visited Roland's manor. He shuffled through the halls, weaker but alive. The study's windows had been boarded over, yet he kept the barrel of ashes in the corner like a memorial. "I dream of blank pages," he said. Yet each morning they remain blank. Perhaps that is penance. Mara considered the detective's prophecy sheet, now sealed in a folder on her desk. She had searched for cases of officers shot through the right lung. None matched. Fate could be bargained with, she hoped, if one refused to write its ending in advance. "Stories are stubborn," she told him. "They find new ink." She handed him a slim package, a modern laptop, screen pristine white. "Try typing," she urged. Roland powered it on, fingers hovering uncertainly. He tapped a key. The letter appeared, black and harmless. He typed another, then a word, then a sentence. No tremor shook the house. No newspaper would print tragedy in the morning. He exhaled, a shuddering laugh. "It feels light," he said, "like breathing after pneumonia." As Mara left, dusk puddled violet over the bay. She glanced back once. Roland sat bathed in the glow of the screen, composing something fragile and tentative, perhaps not genius, perhaps not even publishable, but his own. In her cruiser, she found Ethan waiting, sipping coffee. "Any hauntings?" he asked. "Only ghosts of habit," she replied. She handed him the folded prophecy sheet. "Burn it." He hesitated, then struck a lighter, watching flame curl the edges. When the ember reached the line that spelled his death, the paper disintegrated without drama, without scream. They drove toward town, exhausted yet lighter, leaving behind a manor where keys no longer clacked on their own, and a writer struggling to author life without catastrophe. The bay wind carried only salt now, the ordinary breath of the sea, and if somewhere a dormant relic of iron and ribbon dreamed of ink and blood, it dreamed in cold silence, locked away from stories and the fragile lives they shape.